Hey everyone, welcome back to the Cardboard Herald's Off the Table, a show all about tabletop gaming news, community, and questions. I'm your host, Jack, and let's get this show on the road. Our first news item today is that Stronghold Games' Kickstarter for Aftershock, designed by Alan R. Moon, has been canceled. Now, they did this after it was fully funded and there was 11 days left in the Kickstarter. And the official reason is that not enough people were paying attention to the deluxe edition and they had to rethink their strategy for bringing this game to life. But then some concerns have been raised by another company that produces a game called Aftershock, registered on BGG, with an earthquake-related theme that apparently raises awareness about disaster preparedness and disaster response. And reportedly, Stronghold Games is blocking people on social media anytime that they're bringing this up. So my thoughts on this: first, do your research and use an original name. Games are classified as toys, and copyright is a thing. But also, man, it's especially uncool if it's a product already registered on BGG that's raising awareness for a good cause. And two, don't block people who are trying to raise concerns about your business practices. It's only going to get worse. Third, even if the official reason is true, that sucks. If meeting the funding goal isn't going to cut it, then why was that your funding goal? That's nothing but disingenuous. Stronghold Games says that they're going to be bringing it back to Kickstarter later. They haven't acknowledged the name issue yet, so I'm interested to see where this goes. We interrupt this broadcast for a breaking news update. PAX Sims, the creators of the original Aftershock, have reported that Stephen Bonacore of Stronghold Games and I have spoken and discussed this issue. He has offered a name change and modification, which will settle the issue and make both of us happy. So it sounds like the issue is going to get resolved. I'm just happy that this was taken care of, but 4 people had to put their money forward on Kickstarter. Still kind of sketchy how the whole thing went down, though. Our next story is that Amazon acknowledges that there are some counterfeits in the third-party marketplace. This came out of an investor report where they acknowledge this as a big problem that Amazon needs to deal with in the future. Now, I've heard a lot more about counterfeits in the last 2 years, especially coming from Amazon. And while I haven't had any first-hand experience with it, a buddy of mine actually got a bunk copy of Pandemic Legacy Season 1, which happened to be purchased on Amazon. Once he reported it to Amazon, they ended up replacing it and taking care of it, and I don't think that seller is able to do anything on Amazon anymore. Now, if you don't know what to look out for, counterfeits usually have some sort of discoloration or some iffy materials, so if your Splendor chips turn out to be indeed Pringles, then you probably got yourself a counterfeit. I'll link to a really interesting discussion on Reddit where people talk about a bunch of their counterfeit experiences, and I'd love to hear from you. Have you gotten a counterfeit game? I'm super interested in this stuff, really, since I first heard about counterfeit Magic cards way back in the day. Last news item I wanted to mention is that Stonemaier Games has announced Euphoria, Ignorance is Bliss. This is an expansion for the game. We don't have very many details right now, but it will have a solo mode, which makes all but one of Stonemaier Games' games to have a solo mode, which is really cool. I'm fascinated in solo, and I know that community is really hungry for some more solo designs. So I have one community highlight for you, and that's that Jasco and Lynnvander are teaming up to resurrect Evil Dead 2, the board game. And this is a really cool project that's coming up here soon. To know a little bit more about this project, we got to go back to the original Kickstarter by Space Goat, where they had over 6,000 backers for this thing, and it funded, and people were really excited about it. But the end result is, after all that funding, Space Goat just went under, and people lost out on their money, and a lot of people were really sad about this. So these two companies, Jasco and Lynnvander, have decided, you know what, we're going to make our own Evil Dead 2 game, and they have some of the assets from the design that Space Goat was working on, but they're going to be really making a whole new game based off of what they think that this game was going to be, and even better than that. And they're launching a Kickstarter here soon, either end of February or early March. And part of that is that they plan on, if funding, that they're going to deliver copies of the game to the original backers of the Space Goat Evil Dead 2. Like, hey, man, that's community looking out for community. And also that's a good story to get awareness for your game, which I guess is exactly what it succeeded at doing. All right, we got a really good question that I wanted to take on today. Eric Streed of Goblin Spark, an up-and-coming board game publisher, writes, Ameritrash. I hate that genre name. Is there a better word for it? For the same style game, or do we just have to get really granular about it? And you know, to understand where I'm going with this, then we have to look at the history of the term Ameritrash. And I've prepared what I think is a really helpful illustration for everyone here. As I can tell, people started calling certain games strategy games to differentiate with kids' games. Then European designers started making a sort of non-combative strategy game that had lots of ways to mitigate luck. Many Americans who were introduced to these often looked down on these non-confrontational games, dubbing them Eurotrash. As popularity with these games increased, though, people, being terrible, started to push back and hate on what was then dubbed Ameritrash games. Games with tons of dice and luck, emphasizing theme over mechanics and tons of player interaction. Then game designers started to blend elements of both, making what is often called hybrid games, and generally Eurotrash was shorthanded to Euro, and Ameritrash was more often dropped for American style or Ameritrash. But as games grew more and more popular, these terms became more and more meaningless, and arguments about what is what spread hobby-wide. Outrage flared as protests were held in capital cities all over the world. People demanded that a standard for every dumb board game label be made. Eventually, an armistice had to be reached in the Rosenberg-Christensen Accords in 1963. Suddenly, everything was defined. Gateway was separate from hardcore. Meeples could no longer integrate with dice. Federal currency was minted with the term satisfying mechanics in Golden Age, and self-serving content creators were appointed the arbiters of justice in this horrific cardboard dystopia. What were we talking about again? Honestly, these terms just aren't cutting it anymore. I mean, in a world where pop music can encompass Katy Perry and the Beatles, I think that we're overgeneralizing here. Just use the primary mechanics to describe what the game is, or if you have to, use the weight and the theme. So Terraforming Mars is a mid-weight economic game all about planetary colonization and economic dominion over a natural resource. And that's not getting too granular. But wait, is it more of a heavy side of midweight game or a light side of heavyweight? I'm going to need another illustration. All right, before we go, I just want to give you a couple announcements. We have Platypus Con interview vids posting all up on our video channel, and then we also posted part 2 of our Christophe Boelinger interview, where we really get into some of the controversial aspects of Archipelago, as well as some exciting things going on at Ludicoli. And in case you need another reason to be mad at me, you should go check out my Keyforge review. I think it is an interesting take on things. All right, everyone, that's going to do it for our show today. If you got thoughts on anything that we covered, you got yourself a counterfeit game, or maybe you were one of the Evil Dead 2 backers, or you got some beef to pick with the Aftershock Kickstarter, then start a discussion in the comments below. Also, I'd love it if you let us know about anything that you want us to get the skinny on, any scoops you got that you want to feature in a new episode of Off the Table, or if there's a real cool community project in your neighborhood, I want to hear all about it. Lastly, I just wanted to let you know that this is a really cool format and I love doing it Off the Table, and I want to see it grow. We don't do a lot of advertisement. In fact, we rely on you and word of mouth. So if you really dig this show, then I'd appreciate you spreading the word. So thank you so much for watching another episode of the Cardboard Herald's Off the Table. I'm your host, Jack, and I'll talk to you next week. If you enjoyed this video, we have all kinds of other reviews, interviews, and recommendations via writing, podcasts, and video here on our channel and website cardboardherald.com. Our content is audience supported, so if you want to show your support, please visit our Patreon. Thank you so much for watching. This has been the Cardboard Herald.